Okay, now let's start working with the data. And for example, let's have an assignment of displaying list of invoices on the page. So we need to modify our application. So let me delete the items first because we don't need them anymore. And let me get the invoice list template. Let's call it invoices. Also, let me just change link to method over here. So instead of linking to invoice, we will link to invoice list in the navigation. And one more thing that we need to do. First, we need to delete obsolete items route, delete the function, and list. Because it's just a child element of the invoice, we place it inside of the invoice. So let's see how it's going to look like right now. This is our home, this is our invoice, which links to invoice list. We actually change that here. There you. Now we're actually linking to invoice list. Let me just fix some wording. Okay, so how do we get the data for these invoices? In order to get the data, we need one more Ember element. It is called route. Let me add the JavaScript. Let's call this route invoice list route. The thing is, it doesn't matter how we actually call this JavaScript file, but it matters how we're going to actually name our route. This is how we instantiate our route. Okay, and how do we actually name the route? This is a very interesting question because Ember has its own naming rules. That is really important. So if we want a route to be tied to our template, we need to name it correctly. I usually use Ember Inspector to help me to name my routes or controllers. Go to the Ember Inspector, go to the routes, and just find your template over here. Here's my template invoice list, and here's the names of my route and controller. Even though we don't have routes or controller yet attached to the template, Ember instantiates them for us. So what I'm doing here, I just copy and paste the name of the route. So let's move on. In order to get the model for the template, I must have model property in my route, which contains function, and this function just returns some data. I'm returning the object with content property. Content property has array of elements. Let me create the array. I just created two array elements with the invoice number, total, and the balance. So, and that's not it. We also need to set up our controller's properties. There is another property of the route called set controller, and we have function which actually has two parameters. controller, this is the reference to the controller of invoice list controller, and model, this is our model that we're returning from here. And over here we just set controller's property using this line of code. There we go. So now we set our model, we can actually display this model on our template. So here's our invoice list template, and in order to display our items, we'll be using each handlebars helper. So each model, we reference our model as invoice. We reference every single invoice in the model, and we index. Index, this is the name of the index element we will be using. And we just need to close this helper the same way as we did with link to helpers. Also, I need to get more HTML in order to display this invoice list in the table. This is HTML for the table. Let me put my each helper inside of the table, and let me just output those rows over here. How do we actually reference each invoice? Easy, using just handlebars notation. And I say that I would like to reference number. Just copy and paste it so I don't miss any, so I don't have any spelling issues. And balance. Okay, let's see what is going to happen. Haha, I have a table, but I don't have any elements. So let me inspect my problem. What can I do to inspect my? I want to make sure that I actually. There we go. So first I wanted to put my breakpoint inside of my route in order to make sure that I'm actually getting the data in setup controller property or method. But I found in my sources that I don't have this router yet. I forget to reference it. So let me do that then. So let me create the placeholder for routes. Let me reference it over here. Now let's see what's going to happen. There we go. Now we have two elements, and now we can see our invoice list route. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial.